is Marcy Richardson. I'm originally from Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. And I am an opera singing aerialist and pole dancer and burlesque performer based in New York.
Wonderful. Amazing. And all at a very high professional level, as we have all seen following you / stalking you online.
Correct.
Thank you.
When did you move to New York City?
I moved to New York. I've moved to New York a couple times. So I moved to New York right after I finished, I think it was the Baltimore Opera Young Artist Program in 2005.
Mhm.
But then immediately after, of just a few months in, I was contracted to be a resident artist with Orlando Opera. So I left almost as soon as I moved, and then I officially moved back again in 2010, pretty much. So I've been here 10 years.
10 years. Okay.
Mhm.
Now you're just starting to feel settled.
Exactly. It can take a while.
Well, I moved to Berlin 7 years ago, and I'm like, and now I feel like I'm starting.
Exactly. You're into the pocket.
Yeah, exactly. When did you start doing aerial work and acrobatics and burlesque and all of that?
So I took my very first pole class when I was 30. So this was 10 years ago, almost, shortly after I moved to New York permanently. And I've been a lifelong mover. I've always danced or played sports, but not really at a professional level. And I saw a video of a very famous pole dancer. Her name is Felix winning the Miss Pole Dance Australia Championships. And I just thought it was so beautiful. She looked like something out of a music box. And I thought, gosh, I wish that were me. I wish I could do something like that. And of course, the internet is always watching what you're doing. And I got an ad, on Facebook or something for a local pole dancing studio. So I took my first pole dancing class. It was much harder than I thought it would be. I wanted to look beautiful immediately, and it takes a while. I bought a pole for my apartment, and then the studio eventually expanded to include acrobatics and aerial classes in their teaching. So, I just dove right in, and I was really doing it just as a form of exercise and something really fun for myself. I really wasn't intending to ever perform or incorporate it into my performance life. So it happened all very organically. But yeah, 10 years ago, I just took a pole dancing class on a whim, and one thing led to another.
So then the natural follow-up is, how did you decide to combine that with opera? When did you decide to combine that? And
so I never intended to combine the skills ever, but people actually started pushing me to do it. So I think, the first time I ever sang on a pole for anyone, Madonna's people reached out to me on the internet. They must have found my website, and they said, we're auditioning people for Madonna's Rebel Heart tour. And, we think that it's so interesting that you are a pole dancer and an opera singer. Would you consider creating something, to sing on the pole for this audition? And I said, okay, sure. I'll try. At that point I had been competing in pole competitions.
okay.
So I did have, pardon me, some material on the internet, so it was obvious that I was both a pole dancer and an opera singer. So I prepared something really simple. And I was, of course, number 700 or 800, in the line of people auditioning. You had to go through a dance call first. And so I did that. And then the next day, every pole dancer in town was there to do this audition. And I did that. And then the next day, there was only 4 of us. And we all went for the director. One person got cut. So then there were 3. So yeah, they put me in front of Madonna. I was singing an operatic version of one of her songs on the pole. I don't think they prepped her for what I was going to do. She was looking at me like, what is this girl doing? But honestly, she was the first person I ever publicly sang on a pole for. So
that's pretty epic.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And since then, I actually did a private show that she was at in quarantine, which again, I can get into that later. But You cannot make this
Friends
up.
with Madonna? Is that where we're going here?
You cannot make this up. Well, first of all, I didn't get the gig. I didn't get the concert.
Oh, okay.
But from there, there's such an appetite for variety shows and burlesque here in New York that people started asking, will you come on and do this show? And so I really started little by little, just simple things. And then eventually the routines got more and more complicated. And eventually it just morphed into my full-time job. But it was not something I set out to do. It was really something that people were interested and started asking me to do. And I was really hesitant at first because I didn't want it to seem gimmicky.
Right.
Like, oh, I didn't want the singing to suffer at all, because I really want to be respected as a singer in my own right. So my goal from the beginning has been, if I'm going to do this combination skill set, the singing has to be pristine. If you close your eyes, I want it to, I don't want it to be obvious that I'm doing something extreme physically while I'm singing. I want it to sound as beautiful as if I were just standing there.
I do want us to actually get into a little bit of the pandemic. And while I don't want to revel in this discussion that we've all had a million times over the past year, I want to talk about sort of how we can maybe, what we can take from this experience. Yeah. So
Sure.
let me first start with, just to get a little bit of a setup. Where was your career prior to the pandemic?
So my career prior to the pandemic was at an all-time high. I had my highest earning year right before the pandemic. I was working full-time with company XIV, which is a Baroque burlesque troupe in New York. We have our own theater. I sort of describe it to people as the Moulin Rouge of New York, but more homoerotic.
Ooh.
But it was full-time. I went there every day, just like people go to an office, 6 to 8 shows a week, year round, full-time. So that was my full-time job. In addition to that, I would go to the McKittrick Hotel and do the Barchland Follies every Friday night after my show at company XIV. And that was produced by Suzanne Barch, who's been a nightlife legend since the 80s. And then on my days off, I would perform at Duane Park, which is the most high-end burlesque supper club for burlesque and live music here in New York. So I was there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays when time allowed. And I also was in the movie Hustlers. I did a great scene with J-Lo, Cardi B, Lizzo. It was crazy. So I never had a day off unless I said no to something. So I was really a very, very busy full-time working artist here in New York before the pandemic hit.
So I think it's pretty obvious how the pandemic has affected careers such as yours. How has it affected your art? You think of yourself as an artist and a performer.
Oh, well, I have found the Zoom and online performing thing to be exhausting, but I will say, being part of the burlesque scene, we mobilized immediately. I was having this conversation last night. We are in charge, many of us on the nightlife and burlesque scene. We make our own costumes, we make our own acts, we have a lot of artistic control. A lot of people who are just used to working in a traditional theater or opera are used to being sort of told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They have a routine. So I will say that those of us who are in burlesque and nightlife, I think we adjusted more quickly because we're always forced to sort of create and take control of things. So we started doing online shows immediately, and we are used to adapting, but I will say it has been over a year now and nobody can adapt to this. I mean, this is, so I will say it's been a big challenge. I think my goal from the beginning was to just keep my skill set up, because it's been so painful to lose everything, my livelihood, my social life, because I don't really socialize much out of work because I work so much. And it just stripped away my purpose, my ability to support myself. So from the get-go, I made a commitment to say, I'm not going to let my skill set go in all this. It would just add so much insult to injury if
Right.
at the end of all this, I couldn't climb the pole. I couldn't do an acrobatic routine. You know, I got out of shape and didn't feel good in a tiny costume. So really, it's just been one day at a time. And every day I practice my craft with the goal of I'm going to be ready to work as soon as I'm able.
That's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
I mean, having also come from touring life and working full time, that was something that hit me a bit later, was like, oh, if I don't, I'm so used to singing 70 or 80 shows a year, that's not happening anymore. I have
Right.
to keep that up myself, because it
Absolutely.
so, you know, you're always in shape in a way, but keeping in shape has now
Yes.
a job.
Well, and I'm truly grateful that I did not know how long this would go on, because I don't know if I would have had the mental capacity or resolve to do what I'm doing. But really, I just told myself, day one, you don't know how long this is going to be. Don't let a day go by where you don't do something, because every day counts. Every day you do something good for yourself, whether it's practice, workout, go for a run, every action adds up. Every day adds up. So one day it might seem difficult to get out of bed. It might seem difficult to go for a run or do something good for your body. But if you do one thing that day and then you do another thing the next day, it's been 300 days now.
Yeah.
More. And so those things all add up. So I think that I'm grateful that I just said right from the beginning, don't take a break, get on the pole, get in the hoop, keep going. And so that's what I've been doing the whole time.
Yeah.
So what's your
I love-
motivation, sorry, to
Okay.
keep doing that even on the days when you don't want to? Because to say, oh, I'm going to do that is one thing, but to actually do it.
My motivation to keep up my practice is that I want to go back to work. You know, contrary to this politicized thing that, oh, well, we can't get people to go back to work now. We can't, people want to be unemployment. I do not want to be unemployment. I want to work, but I don't want to work at Amazon. I don't need to be a delivery person for Amazon Prime. Like, I am a full-time professional performer. And the second, you know, the day comes where I can go back to work at my theater, I want to be ready to pick up right where I left off, not lose any ground. So that has been my motivation, because I love my craft. I love my job. I want to do it until the day I drop. And so that has been my motivation, because I absolutely love my craft and my life.
We've heard a lot about your actual your craft and your art. Let's take it a little bit in the direction of how maybe digital media or social media has either helped or hindered that development. So how active were you online prior to the pandemic?
On social media, to be specific.
I was very active on social media before the pandemic. And I feel like social media has been instrumental. Is that the word? It's not instrumental. I feel like social media has been, I guess, very important in my career, because a lot of people find me on social media when it comes to, you know, hustlers. They slid into my DMs on Instagram.
Wow.
And the costume designer and the director followed me on social media, and they had come to shows before, and they sort of wrote a little cameo in for me. So social media has been extremely important in connections and career opportunities well before the pandemic. So I definitely had a very established online presence well before the pandemic. And I think it's been very important leading into the pandemic to have that sense of community, connection to people. And I will say, if you look at my analytics, you know, I'm not one of those people that has 100,000 followers. I have 13,000. But if you look at my analytics, almost 65-70% of those people are local.
Oh, really?
They're in New York.
Okay.
And at least 65% are women.
Interesting.
So, you know, you would think, oh, she's just burlesque performer, pole dancer. All these guys must be like cruising over to her Instagram. But really, I have a very strong presence as far as local New Yorkers, women, And, I feel like I have a lot of people that I'm connected to that are connected to me personally. They've come to see shows.
Okay.
And so I had that in the beginning, and then I've really strived to maintain that throughout the pandemic, just because, man, what else do we have right now?
Seriously. Well, but you've also been very, very open and yourself, and you've always been very outspoken on your social media. And I do have to say, I noticed that your followers are quite active and interactive with you.
Yes, absolutely. I am definitely not shy about sharing my political views, no matter how controversial, and I won't apologize for how I feel. And I also think, it's important to, I think on social media, it's so easy to edit yourself and be ultra glossy and only show the good things. And I really try to keep it real. And of course, you're going to see me on there in costume and full beat, but I try to put in my stories, you see me in my pajamas and no makeup. You see me on a bad day and I say, I'm having a really awful day. I'm having a really hard time with this. I cried for 4 hours today, and I try to share that with people because I think that other people are in the same boat. And it kind of sucks when you go online and you see, wow, this person looks like they're just doing so well in all of this. And I think it's important to share the times when you're not well. And so I just think that is part of people who follow me. I think it's part of why they connect to me on a personal level, because I try to not edit the bad parts.
Yeah, it seems like you have a very organic following and people that actually are interacting with you and are a part of your community, as opposed to just kind of following and, oh, that's a pretty picture and
Absolutely. Well, and I respond to people, when people message me, I write back. When people comment on a post, I say thank you. When people disagree with me on something, I have a conversation. Likewise, I've also been guilty in this pandemic of, drinking too much and attacking people on social media at night when I see them not wearing a mask, or if I'm just so frustrated with the situation. And so I think that I interact with people, and it's not always well received, but it is what it is.
You want to show all the sides of you, good, bad, or indifferent. Sections. But you mentioned people look to you for your political thoughts. Why do you think people look to celebrity or artists for their thoughts on politics?
It's interesting. I think some people look towards artists for their thoughts on politics, and some people come to shows and say, I didn't come here for the politics. I came here for the burlesque. And I'm like, well, I have news for you. Burlesque has always been political. The word burlesque is derived from the Italian word burla, I'll have you know, which means joke. And so in the very beginnings of burlesque, it was often around political satire and making fun of high society, mixing highbrow with lowbrow, always a commentary on, high society and politics. So that's been the history of burlesque from the very beginning. So, there's no separating the two. You can't come to a burlesque show and enjoy the bodies and enjoy enjoy what we have to say without what we think, and that what we think about politics, what we think about what's going on in the world. It's a commentary. So the two are very much intertwined. So I always tell people, you can't separate burlesque from politics. You can't separate burlesque from opinion. So I think that a lot of people, I think that it interests a lot of people. And I think it interests people when a burlesque performer feels empowered to express their opinion on stage.
Why do you think that live performance is so important for people?
First of all, I definitely, I very much believe in science and safety. And my biggest problem in all of this is that pretty much every other business right now, as we know it at the time we are recording this, is up and running, at least up here in the States, in some way with restrictions, right? You know, we've got all sorts of guidelines to follow, whether it be social distancing, masks, sanitation. And I feel like, what is it about arts and performing that is so off limits and just can't be figured out? You know, we've got football, we've got sports, we have audiences watching games. What is it that's so off limits about the arts that we can't operate with those type of restrictions, right? And so I just think moving forward, okay, people love sports, right? They come together, they connect. There's a lot of people who don't like sports. There's a lot of people who want to go to the theater, you know, or who want to hear a concert. Is a form of entertainment, is a form of connection, is a form of coming together, is a form of experiencing something beautiful, experiencing humanity. And I feel like there is absolutely no reason under the sun that we in the performing arts can't find some way to move forward with protocols in place, just like every other business. So I truly think that the way forward is, every other business has protocols to follow, and I believe we should be able to move forward and follow the same protocols.
You bring up a really good point, that it's about this sort of shared human experience, much like it
Yes.
is for sports. If the arts is your form of entertainment, it is a way of coming together and experiencing that together. And
Yes.
I've seen through this pandemic that we need that kind of social interaction. We need that human interaction, and we need that shared experience as well. Both through this
Well,
pandemic.
and look at this, look at this pandemic. Who have people been turning to in all of this? Artists. And, you know, for better, for worse, a lot of people are used to now getting art for free on the internet. You know, there's been so many online shows, so much online content. And, you know, people say, oh, the arts aren't important, but a lot of people have been turning to us for entertainment, for distraction. And, you know, we're all still here, and we have to have something to go back to at the end of all of this.
If I wanted to say, you know, about other businesses and things being able to open, but not the arts, I think something that happened there in a way, our creativity has maybe turned on us a bit, because sports couldn't happen. I mean, they could happen online and without audience, but there's so many things that could not happen online, and artists found a way to put out content and to put out entertainment and full shows and all of these things. So in a way, I think, as you know, as governments they're reopening, they're like, well, yeah, we need to get to that, and it's important, but don't worry, it's still happening currently. It's just in a different format. And of course, you know, we know it's not the same. And of course, the biggest difference is that people are giving out a lot of free content right now, which kind of brings me to my next question, which is that, you know, these streaming and online content and all of this stuff has tripled or quadrupled or whatever during the pandemic. Do you think it's going to stay post-pandemic? I mean, obviously, no, you don't.
No, people are over the digital thing. People have been very supportive. At least I found art supporters have been very supportive in my community, and very supportive of any online content I've put out. I mean, I've also, a lot of people know, thankfully, I have access to outdoor space in my apartment in Brooklyn, and I've taken to putting on full on produced shows in my backyard, you know, 12 people max. I give people like 12 feet of distance much more than outdoor dining. It is, all outdoor dining protocols are in place. You wear a mask when you come to use the restroom, and I've done that safely. I did 3 shows. Obviously, it's the winter, so I'm sidelined right now. But I feel like I'm trying to lead the way by showing people, leading by example. Like, you can do this. We can have live arts and performance. And unfortunately, because I'm trying to get support into the hands of artists who need the support right now, it's sort of limited to the people with the resources. I charge $500 a seat for you to watch a show in my yard. I provide unlimited alcohol. I mean, and that's about as much as you pay for a seat to sit in the orchestra at the Met.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a champagne couch to see Nutcracker Rouge, a company XIV,
Wow.
is almost $1,000 here in New York. So I feel like what I've been charging is fair. But again, I've been trying to lead by example. Like, we can do this. We can do this in a safe way. I just feel like, for whatever reason, we're just not on the top of the list of the people who are in charge of telling us what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Well, this is, of course, an interesting conversation from where we're all 3 sitting, right? We're sitting over here in Berlin, and the way that this pandemic has been handled has been different. The way that the arts are appreciated, even pre-pandemic, is very, very different.
Very different.
The way they have been supported through this pandemic has been very different. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone is okay, and it doesn't mean that there will be the jobs once this is over. But it is interesting, at least, to see from all of what creativity has come out of this. And you are correct. You do lead by example. You're a very open person. You are always very open with your opinions and how you've experienced this pandemic, as well as the Black Lives Matters movement through this past year. And you're leading by example by showing other artists how to move forward and essentially demand our position back on a live stage.
Absolutely. I insist on demanding it back. And I insist that it is important. And you know what? I will do what I have to do. You want me to sing in a mask? I will sing in a mask. And all these people who can't, I don't want to wear a mask. Well, I am singing opera outside doing acrobatics in 29 degrees in a mask. You can wear a mask. And if that's what we have to do right now, that's what we have to do. And I insist that, if that's the way forward, then we move forward and we wear the masks. I just, whatever it is we have to do, I think we need to do it. I'm not going to stand back and just say, well, we shouldn't be here, because we should be here. And I think that I feel so strongly that it is so important for artists to be seen and heard, and to have the stage. I think that, I just think that we have to do the right thing, and that's masks, that's following the protocols. I mean, whatever we have to do, I think that there's a way to do it.
I find your passion and your commitment really inspirational. So I do thank you for that. And I'm excited for other people to hear this and get to know you a little bit better.
I love the word insist. I think it's perfect. Of course.
I insist. I just insist that there is a way to do this.
Yeah.
I know it's hard. I know it's a pain in the ass, but I just insist. And I don't know if people are following what's happening in New York, but they just announced, like, oh, we want to get the arts and culture back in New York. We're going to do these like pop-up performances. And, we booked Sarah Jessica Parker and Hugh Jackman. And I'm like, I think they're fine. How is that? How is that getting local artists back to work? And then there's some other weird thing about getting the arts back. They say, oh, arts organizations. Oh, by the way, speaking of pop-ups, we already got that. We've already been doing it. Artists have popped up. Okay. We figured it out here in New York. We don't need you to be like, oh, what about a pop-up? Like, we've been doing pop-ups safely, actually, since October.
Yes.
And, there's another initiative where, in New York, they're saying arts venues can apply to do one performance between now and October 31st.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, one performance? How is that supposed to help
Anybody.
anyone? I do 8 performances a week, yo. Like, so I am not at all satisfied or happy with how it is being handled in New York. So I'm hoping we will turn a corner soon. But yeah, for sure. It's crazy.
So what advice would you give to young people either just finishing their degrees in university or just starting out in a desire for performing arts career? What advice would you give them?
First of all, I can't imagine being in school at this time and graduating with the hopes of performing right now. Like my deepest sympathy. Like, I just feel like it must be so discouraging. And, my advice would be the arts will come back. I firmly believe that. And I think that it's just very important to think outside the box. It kind of sounds like cliche to say, but you have to have it doesn't hurt to have a really extensive skill set. To be savvy digitally, obviously, whether, producing your own content. I, as a burlesque and nightlife performer, I make costumes, I sew, I create things. I've become very good at marketing myself and spreading the word on social media. I just think that the more skills that you can acquire, the better. It will only help you and your craft. And I also think that there's no shame in having alternate skills that you can rely upon, when you're between gigs, when you need extra sources of income. It definitely helps if those skills can be utilized on your own time, or digitally, so that you can be flexible for performing. But I just think the more skills that you can attain to help stay afloat, the better. Learn another language so that you can tutor or teach, learn coding, learn how to build websites. I don't even know what it is. I'm just saying, like, be a Renaissance woman, be a Renaissance man. Like, that's the,
right?
Yeah, that's the advice I would give to anyone graduating and all artists. Just be that person, be a Renaissance man or woman. And, don't be afraid to learn other skills and to call upon them whenever you need. I just think that we have to diversify here.
Yeah, it's funny that we're kind of coming back to that, because I think that was completely opposite from the line that we were always fed when we were in university, which is be a specialist, really go for it. If you see yourself doing anything else, don't do this.
Yes. Everyone said, when we were in school, all or nothing, right? And my parents would say, oh, why don't you get a backup in education? And I will say, and I stand by this, I think that is not a good backup. I mean, teachers who are really good at teaching love to teach, and they want to teach. You don't want a teacher. Yeah. You don't want a teacher who's just like, oh, I guess I have to do this because the performing thing didn't work out. So I think education, not a good backup. I don't think it's good. I think there's nothing wrong in just being like, oh, I have this entirely other thing unrelated that I can do to help me. So I think that it doesn't even have to be, like an artistic skill. But I think, we were totally fed, like, this is the formula, right? You have to go to school, then you have to get into a young artist program, and then you have to get this manager, and that's the only way. And, I'm here to say that is not the only way. I had a manager for a while, agent. I'm like, I'm getting all my own work. Like, I'm not giving you, like, I don't need you. No,
people are sliding into your DMs. You don't,
right. I have not met anyone so far that knows how to market me and sell me and expose me to opportunity better than myself.
That's great. That's great.
So, well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to finally meet you.
My pleasure. Stay in touch, and I really hope to work with you both at some point on something amazing.